I uploaded this story to my channel months ago, but there have been new updates recently that might interest you. I'll leave the timestamp in the description so you can skip the old bits. My sisters demanded that I let them rent out my vacation home for profit when I refused. Their husbands broke in and are now facing charges. This all happened today. My folks decided to host a barbecue because I guess that's what older people do. I declined because I really don't like my two sisters, their husbands, or they're my kids and I are child-free, and my wife and I are trying to have a baby. Long story short, when we arrived, there were about 20 people there. My sisters and their husbands were already drunk. My mom was spending all her time trying to keep the nieces and nephews, aged 7 to 11, under control. My dad had gone to the whirlpool area of the pool with a cooler full of beers. My wife and I chatted with a few people, ate some food, and had a frozen margarita. My sisters and their husbands were busy criticizing us for being late, not wearing our swimsuits, and ruining the vibe. It was a typical suburban summer get-together. About 45 minutes later, two of the kids ran at one of the neighbor guests who was standing next to the pool and pushed her in. She fell into the pool but didn't fall far, so only got half wet. She was clearly upset about it. She didn't make a scene, though. She just went over to where the parents were, grabbed their towels, dried herself off, and left. My sisters and Bills thought it was all great fun. A bit later, I was standing a few feet away from the pool chatting away with someone when I saw three of the kids running at me from the corner of my eye. Obviously, I was next. I just jumped out of their way at the last second. All three of them, the kids, ran straight into the pool at full speed. Most of the other guests, including my wife and me, started laughing, but their moms, who were pretty drunk, freaked out. Two of the kids couldn't swim, even though they were in swimsuits. I wasn't in swim gear, so I stepped back from the pool and let other people fish the kids out. The kids were crying like they lost a limb. All hell broke loose. The four drunk parents were yelling at everyone in general and me in particular for nearly letting their kids drown. Also, two of the kids had been videoing the trick using their parents' iPhones, which were now at the bottom of the pool. One of my Bills got into the pool to try to retrieve the phones, but his BMI and BAC made that impossible. No one else volunteered to help, which was unsurprising given that my sisters were still complaining about how they were being treated. I told my sisters it was their job to watch their kids, and that if anything happened to them, it would be their responsibility, not mine. If something like that had happened to them, it would have been their responsibility, not mine. There were some pretty strong words on both sides. My wife and I left after the other Bill fell over and face planted while yelling at us. Now they're saying I should have let the kids knock me into the pool and have their fun and ruin my phone. I'd like to make one more point. My dad was in the whirlpool the whole time. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. I realized they're just kids and they were just having fun. That's the most important thing. I think it's more a reflection on their parents than on them. I just wish we hadn't gone. It's nice to see my folks and their neighbors, but I really don't like my sisters or their husbands. They don't hide their envy of us, and they're just exhausting to be around. I've never been close to some of my family. It's more like oil and water. My sisters are 8 and 10 years older than me. I also don't have much in common with their husbands. They're okay guys, but I just don't care about the things that are important to them, and vice versa. I do know that the four of them are somewhat envious of our lifestyle. Both the sisters are stay-at-home moms. Both the husbands make good money. One makes more than I do, but both my wife and we have professional careers, we don't have kids, and we're way more responsible with money. As a result, we have a lot more investments, etc. We don't have to drive cars full of kid debris, and we take nice trips once or twice a year. It definitely GRS on both sisters and by extension their husbands, so we get some petty behavior from them on an ongoing basis. Overall, neither my wife nor I enjoy their company, which is why I wanted to skip the get-together. It just wasn't worth it to me. My wife is a positive person and is usually happy to see them. Hopefully, next time your wife won't feel guilt into going. That's probably the one positive thing that will come out of this. My wife is much more tolerant and forgiving than I am towards my siblings. Based on what she was saying on the way home, I think she's had it with them as well. Your dad sounds awesome. Yeah, my dad's very chill. He loves being around groups of people. He used to be the same. He likes people to enjoy themselves, and he's definitely enjoying life as a retiree. He and 2 other guys were just watching the show. My mom's cool, too, but the situation upset her kids. By the time I left, they were inside watching TV. I think they're 7, 9, 10, and 10.5. It was the middle 3 who played kamikaze with me. I'm guessing the 10.5-year-old was the one who played. My folks are gregarious and like to have people over. They have the classic great for entertaining house and are always coming up with a reason to get together. They'd wanted everyone to be at their place for the 4th of July, but one of my sisters and her family were on vacation, so it was a fake 4th of July party, complete with flags, red, white, and blue decorations, a barbecue, a margarita machine, and so on. Sparklers were promised to the kids, and my nieces and nephews were the only kids there. All of the neighbors are older, like my parents. Update: August 17, 2023. Almost a month later, my folks told me that my nieces and nephews are all good swimmers and that they use the pool. The 7-year-old is still a beginner, but he loves the water. My sister said they couldn't swim, so they looked bad. To be fair, none of the kids are allowed in the deep end, where they fell in. It was the 2 10-year-olds and the 9-year-old who tried to push me into the pool after we left. The party ended on a sour note. My drunk brother-in-law fell face first. While he was at the urgent care place getting his face stitched up, he was too drunk to drive, so my dad took him. My sister started a group text and said some really nasty things. Their husbands threw in a few comments as well. My wife and I blocked the 4 of them. My mom called me. She was pretty upset about what they said. She and my dad were in the chat, and I don't blame her because of the texts. My parents told my sister's bills to come over the next day, Sunday, without their kids to get things straight and lay down some ground rules. Mom's wording resulted in a sorry, if not enthusiastic, apology from the siblings via my mom's phone. I'm glad my wife was with me when they called her. I kept my cool with a few stern looks, but I told them thanks and that we felt no need to discuss it further since I thought things were settled. I unblocked them. I got a text from one of the bills that evening. It said the phones cost $100 and asked when I'd be paying for them. I replied and told them we were done with this nonsense. We're going no contact with sisters' spouses and not to invite us to any more holidays or get-togethers. If they'll be present, then I blocked the sisters and their spouses again. Things really came to a head when my dad called them and gave them a piece of his mind. He told them that he wouldn't be welcoming the grandkids at his place for the foreseeable future, given that my mom regularly provides free babysitting. This really got them rattled. He also banned them from using the vacation house and informed them that he and my mom are the actual owners, not him and my mom. This really freaked them out. Both of my sister's families used the place a lot, including having their friends up for weekend getaways. This was a big deal. This was all pretty out of character for my folks. They clearly had it. For reference, I never wanted my sisters to know we owned the place. We bought it for my folks. They'd always wanted a place in the mountains. Keeping the ownership quiet was just a way to avoid drama with my siblings. A couple of days later, my sister and their husbands came to our place. They apologized in person. We were out to dinner, so they left a note. One sister also called me at work. I sent her to voicemail. We've decided that being out of contact is the best thing for the indefinite future. We haven't interacted with them for the last 3+ weeks. I'm done with them. How life has been. It's been less than a month, but I have to say that blocking them has actually made our lives noticeably more peaceful. I hadn't realized how much ongoing low-level drama they create. They're not bad people. They're just a pain, and I don't care about them using the weekend place. It's technically ours, but we bought it for my folks. They control it and decide who uses it when they aren't. We pay for all the operating costs and taxes. One good thing about this blow-up is that we now know what we'll be doing with the property when my folks get older. I was prepared to take over managing it, allocating weekends, maintaining it, and such, but now we know. We'll just sell it. If we want to go to the mountains, we'll just rent an Airbnb. Oops, parents. Yeah, my folks are pretty dumb. They're pretty laid back, though. They're very much live and let live. I figure they'll ease up on all of this soon, but that's their decision. We still won't be attending any family events for the foreseeable future. What sucks for my sisters is that they're probably very worried that I'll keep them from using. The cabin is another matter. That's up to mom and dad until the girls are older. It puts an end to one of the sisters' fantasies of building a compound of houses when we inherit the property. I've known about this for some time, but it's been ignored. The lots up there only have one area that can be built on. But this piece of property is way larger because it's at the end of a road. At least 3 houses with great views could be placed on that land. They're not really sorry. They just want things from you. I agree. Their apologies aren't sincere, and I don't plan to interact with them anytime soon regarding the vacation home. That's really my parents' decision. Technically, I own it and cover all the expenses, but I bought it for them and gave them day-to-day control over it. They're good people and they always wanted a getaway place for the family, but there's no way they could have ever bought it. I could afford to buy it for them because I've been fortunate financially and I save and invest like a demon. Plus, I got a massive bonus the same year I sold my home and moved in with my now wife. I don't care if my folks let my siblings use the house, but I will admit I'm enjoying my sister's discomfort over finding out that I could afford to buy the place and let my folks use it while never mentioning it to them. Dad changed the lock code when they went up last week, so now only he, my wife, and I have it. My mom says that once a week, she and sometimes my dad have been going over to each sister's place and spending the day with the kids. When school started, she's going to pick each set up from school once a week on separate days and take them home, spend the evening with them. She says the 5 of them together stress her out, but separately they're fine. My parents have both said the same. They told me they don't plan on having my sisters and their families back to their place in the near future. They seem to be enjoying the quiet. My guess is that they were already tired of the old dynamic and used the pool party nonsense as an excuse to make some changes to the relationships. One fun note on Y's post was removed from Ida is that the violence was property damage. I still don't get it. I guess the update is ridiculous. August 26, 2023. 9 days from the previous post, my parents have paid off their house and have minimal debt, but they didn't save much for retirement. My dad gets a solid pension and they have a bit of savings, but there's no huge stash of cash. I bought their current car for them after they retired as a retirement gift so they could have something nice to drive. It was the first car in probably 20 years that they didn't lease. My sisters think my parents are rolling in cash, and that our parents will leave the 2 of them everything, since I don't need more money. So they've never cared about saving either. As it turns out, my oldest sister and her husband have 3 kids. They've been living beyond their means for some time and are in financial straits. They've maxed out their credit card and are behind on their car leases to the point that one is about to get repossessed. He bragged in the past about making X per year, but it turns out to be. She told her mother on Tuesday that she'd been renting out the vacation house for the last 3 years instead of staying there regularly. She's been pocketing the cash, too. We're talking $2,000 plus for a weekend and at least $4,000 for a week. She's been cut off from using the place. She's already had to cancel one group. She's now worried they'll lose everything. My folks aren't in any position to give them a loan. My other sister was aware of her renting out the place, but of course hasn't ever said anything. I suspect she's done the same thing as well because I went up there once to drop off an ATV I had worked on, and there was a family there who claimed to be staying there with my sister, her family, and that I let it go at the time because I figured she'd loan out the house to some friends. But I've always wondered if she's done something else. I found out through my folks, who are pretty stressed out about it. Mom is more stressed than Dad. He's mainly just pissed off about it. I know Dad feels betrayed, and I imagine he's embarrassed that he's in no position to help his daughter out. He did reiterate that as long as it's up to him. It looks like the girls won't be using the vacation home anytime soon. My folks let me know what's going on because they figured my sisters would come after me next. And they were right. On Thursday, my sisters came to our place again without their husbands. They waited outside the door until I got home. I had to choose between fighting with them in public, them making a scene if I went in without them, or letting them in. I let them in. I got a story from the older sister. The younger one backed her sister up, saying I needed to let them use the mountain place again right away. They also said I've been a bad brother and that I needed to step up and plan on paying for their kids' college tuition since that's what family does. I let them tell their side of the story and then called them out based on what my folks had told me. Things escalated from there. There was denial, crying, cursing, yelling, you name it. 2 days later, I'm still hearing their voices in my head. I said some harsh things to them, but nothing that wasn't true. They finally left after about an hour. Then I took a shower and went to bed. When I got up, my wife was home. She told me she'd had to block more phone numbers because my sisters were calling nonstop from new ones. People messaged me yesterday asking me to call. I'm sure my sisters have told them what happened, but I'm not up to it. I haven't had a chance to go over it all yet. I'm usually pretty energetic, but this situation has really worn me down. I had just enough energy today to drive up to the vacation house and padlock the entrance gate shut. I'm the only one with a key, so I'm hoping that will be enough to ensure my siblings leave the place alone. They probably won't be able to walk for 400 yards uphill to get to the house. I'll provide an update from here on October 12th. It's been 2.5 weeks since my last update, and I have another update regarding the challenging situation with my extended family. Given what's happened over the past 2 weeks, I thought it might be time to share what's been going on. After my sisters came to my place, my mom and dad told me they were done managing the vacation home. It seemed like the sisters had been pressuring them to let them use the place again. Basically, my folks handed the responsibility for the place over to me and told me it was my problem from here on out. Then they kept track of who would be using it when and took care of routine maintenance, replacing worn-out items, etc. In any case, they decided they didn't want to be in the middle of all this. I don't blame them, but I'm disappointed because the place was supposed to be something for them to enjoy and hang out in, and they use it regularly. Plus, I've never cared that they let my sisters and their families use it. I've always thought of it as my parents' place, even though I technically own it. Now, though, my folks won't have access without my involvement, which changes the whole dynamic of the place. I've taken several steps to secure it. I already mentioned that I locked the gate with a heavy-duty chain and the best lock I could find. I also did a full reset on all the door keypads and created all new codes. Security cameras were installed yesterday, which is actually pretty cool. It's great because the installer convinced me to put in a high-re one that looks out over the valley. The system cost me way more than I thought it would, but it's worth it for the peace of mind. The installer also put up signs on the property saying the place was monitored by video. I also installed a heavy-duty lockout for the water shut-off drain valve. I really hope I lose the keys for it because if I do, it's going to be a real hassle to try to remove them. I haven't told anyone yet. My wife told me that the water is locked off and that only we have the keys. Last week, I got separate calls at my office from both of the husbands trying to convince me to let them use the house like they always have. The older one had gone up with some friends for a guy's night out, but couldn't get in because of the gate lock. He was pretty pissed and embarrassed about being locked out. I'm sure he would have broken the lock if he could have. During his call, he kept B. At one point, he was alternately pushy and victimized. He even threatened to rip the gate out of the ground. He also admitted that they'd been renting it to a few friends who needed the money. He said that I was ruining their business and that I should refund their guests' money. I should have recorded the conversation with him, but I don't know how to do that from an office phone. The other bill just sounded like he was being made to call by my sister. I told him not to plan on ever using the place again. I also told them they can't use the place and not to ask again. I'm considering selling the vacation home. My wife and I won't use it enough to justify keeping it. There aren't going to be any family get-togethers there anytime soon. I mentioned selling it to my folks. Their response was pretty much what I'd expect. I'm looking to double my money by selling the place. It's made up of 3 lots with amazing views and is at the end of a private road. However, I'm going to wait a while to sell as it would be an emotional decision. My sisters and I aren't currently speaking and I don't plan to initiate contact. I'm not sure what the status between them and my parents is and I don't want to know. On the plus side, we spent an evening with my parents last week and went to a new restaurant it was nice. Nobody brought up any of that stuff. Mom did give us an update on the nieces and nephews, though. She's spending time with them at their homes. Sorry this update isn't full of laughs or surprises. That's just life. October 16th, 2023, he's responsible for a good number of properties, some of which are vacation rentals and some of which are weekend places like ours. He has access to my camera feeds and performs a physical check every week or two. I think he may have the best job in the mountains. He gets paid to drive around with his dog, walk around the properties, and hang out on people's decks whenever he feels like it. He also has a camera feed from a house near the start of the private road that takes still shots whenever a vehicle goes past it. The cost is $45 per month. He's got a great deal. Just $0 per month. Plus he'll do basic maintenance and repairs on an hourly basis. He's friends with all of the sheriff's deputies too, so he's got a lot of peace of mind from doing this. He sends photos from his walks to everyone once or twice a week. I have to brag a bit on my parents. I got all this from them tonight at dinner. They were getting pressure from my sisters to demand that I open up the vacation house to everyone for Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving up there had become quite the tradition. It's not for me or my wife. We've gone once in a year. My dad refused to bother me about it because he knew I'd say no. They came up with a great plan. They're organizing the Thanksgiving gathering. If everyone splits the cost in advance, they'll rent an Airbnb in the mountains. Otherwise, they'll host Thanksgiving at their place. One sister was against it. The oldest one is all for doing the Airbnb, but she doesn't have any money. The deadline to commit to the Airbnb has passed, so it looks like Thanksgiving will be at my parents' place regardless. We won't be there. My parents have asked that we not sell the place for now. They decided they'd still like to use it occasionally, but not until my sisters have come to terms with the new normal. Of course, they'd probably like it if everyone could get together there again down the road. It's just not going to happen. I'd prefer to sell it and move on, but I can live with keeping it if my parents do use it now and again. It will be worth even more down the road. My wife and I have stayed in touch with neither my sisters nor their husbands. Both sisters have called from new numbers and left messages on Google Voice, insisting that I meet with them for our parents' sake to work out how everyone can use the family vacation home. They also called my wife. I'm glad I was already in the habit of not answering calls if I don't recognize the number. Honestly, I'm not sure if they're delusional or if they think they can bully me into giving them access again. Either way, I don't really care. My parents tell me that the oldest sister and her husband are getting out of the leases for their SUV and big truck and are selling their jet skis and some other items they've never needed. It's really tough on her. She's quite the braggart and won't like being seen in something older, smaller, or cheaper. My Bill's identity is very much wrapped up with his truck as well. He even has a small tattoo of the truck company's logo, which is one of the many reasons why he and I never hung out. Several people have suggested I make the vacation home into an Airbnb, but I don't plan to do so at least anytime soon. I know it would make money, but it would cause a huge amount of drama across the family and stress out my parents. It would also be a hassle to remove personal items. My folks have stuff that has no place to go, and there would be wear and tear on the place. I'd have to spend some time on it, even though I'd use a manager to do it. It just isn't worth it to me. Update post November 5th, 27th, 2023 1. It's been 5 months since I wrote most of this, but I decided to wait to post it until I wasn't so wound up. Unfortunately, waiting didn't work. I'm still wound up. I apologize if this is a bit of a rambling post. A lot has happened, and it's been difficult to write coherently. To give you the short version, my brothers-in-law broke into my vacation home and were arrested. They've been charged with breaking and entering, destruction of property, and communicating threats, all Class 1. I've decided to keep the charges against my brothers-in-law, but I might drop them if I'm fully paid for the damage they caused. As of Saturday evening, they were still in jail, but I assume they're out by now. Things had settled down, at least I thought so, but I haven't seen or heard from my sisters in over 6 weeks. My parents went up to the house for a week and had a good time. David, the property manager I hired, has worked out great. He's done a couple of repairs already. I asked him to do some repairs and gave him a list of things to work on. He usually sends a photo or two of wildlife or a sunset to his clients every week, which made me want to get up there on Friday after Thanksgiving. My bills went to my vacation home. They used an angle grinder to cut through the chain on the driveway gate and damage the gate in the process. They also tried to get in through the front door and ruin the lock set and gouged the door. The door was badly damaged. They finally got in through the utility floor door and a locked internal door. They also broke into the barn. I'm not sure why. When they went out through the front door, they were met by sheriff's deputies. David gets notifications from the camera system when there's activity. He saw what was going on and called the sheriff's department. According to David, the Bills tried to leave, but the deputies didn't buy it. They were breaking into an empty house. The house is usually ransacked by meth heads, so this was a pretty serious incident. When the Bills were arrested, they freaked out, saying they were going to beat the hell out of me. It's not a good idea to do that in front of the cops. David and the sheriff's office tried calling my wife and me to see what we wanted to do, but we were spending the day with her parents and had left our phones in the car, so we couldn't be reached. They were on vacation, so they booked the Bills on everything, which is what I would have asked them to do anyway. Bills called their wives from jail, who of course freaked out. They called my folks and tried to call me, but I was blocked. They tried to find a lawyer up there to arrange bail, but it was difficult given that it's a rural area and it was a holiday weekend. My older sister has no cash and her cards are maxed out, so if they made bail, my middle sister would have had to pay for both. I know they were still in jail as of Saturday afternoon. We didn't check our phones until late Friday on the way home from the in-laws. There were a ton of calls and messages from my mom, dad, David, and the sheriff's department. Talk about ruining a great day. I was in such a good mood until I looked at my phone. My wife read through the texts and listened to messages. She read them out to me, and by the time we got home, I had some idea of what was going on. I tried to get past my anger and think clearly. I called David to get the latest on what had happened and how bad the damage was. This made me angrier. I ended Friday by calling the sheriff's department and telling them there was no misunderstanding. The Bills had absolutely no right to be on my property, and I wanted to press charges. I didn't call my folks back. I barely slept. I waited until Saturday afternoon to call my folks. They were both pretty rattled. My mom, in particular, and my sisters had pressured them into telling me I should tell the cops it was all a mistake and that I wanted the charges dropped. I refused outright and told them there was no way I'd do that until I spoke with an attorney and also not until I was paid in full for whatever it will cost to fix everything. My mom was crying hard by the time we got off the phone, which made me feel even worse. It seems like my dad suggested it was time for a complete start over, but also said he thought they needed to pay for the damage. I haven't gone up to the property yet because there's nothing I can do. I'll probably go nuts when I see the damage in person. The photos are bad enough. I'm hoping to go tomorrow or Wednesday, but my job isn't one I can just leave for non-emergencies. I've already left. I've been in touch with 2 attorney friends to ask for their advice on the best way to take legal action against my sisters and the outstanding bills. I'm not sure what I can do, but I'm hoping to get restraining orders. I have all the texts they've sent me that might be useful. I'm seriously considering suing them for the money they made renting the place. I don't care about the cash, but it will help make them as miserable as possible. I'm ready to take action. I should mention a couple of things. 1. Bill didn't know I'd hired someone to keep an eye on things or that there are cameras there now. My parents knew, but they hadn't told him because they knew it would just give my sisters a reason to cause trouble. There are signs on the property stating it's being monitored with cameras and no trespassing signs. 2. My wife has completely had it at this point. I don't blame her. I've been really patient about it all, but she reached her limit and was not shy about letting me know. She told me it's up to me how I deal with this, but that she thought they all needed to be taught a hard lesson. 3 of the older brothers likely won't face any repercussions at their jobs over this, but the middle brother has a security clearance, so he might. I'm hoping that will be motivation for the middle brother to pay for the damages himself immediately. David, the caretaker, has an interesting background. I knew he was friends with some of the deputies because they were all locals. I was wrong. He was a cop in a big city for years. He was shot on duty and afterwards decided to quit and move to where his parents had retired. He has some PTSD over it all. His dog is a certified service animal and is usually with him. I know law enforcement people tend to hang together. I don't know how they became his friends. I don't want to see or speak with these guys for the rest of my life. I know this is in direct conflict with my overwhelming urge to make their lives as miserable as possible. A lot of people have said I should have been harder on all of this from day one. I've avoided it because it would have stressed out my parents. I hate this kind of drama, but I don't care. My wife is pretty much out of the loop on this now. She doesn't want to hear about it for a while and says it's in my lap. I'm guessing she's not going to get involved from now on other than listening to me vent. Edit. I'm guessing they were planning on using it for family getaways and are renting it. David, the property manager, says it's deer season until the end of the year. I know the Bills have used it in the past as a base camp for big group hunting weeks. It sleeps quite a few people, so one event with friends could net them thousands of dollars. I'm guessing, but that would explain why they broke into the barn as well. I bought a 6-seater mule a few years back, and they would win. I don't think they wanted to trash the place. It means too much to my dad, and they both like him a lot. Update, December 2nd, 2023. 5 days later, December 2nd, 2023. Saturday. I didn't think I'd be doing another post this soon, but a lot has happened over the past 2 days. The short version is that I think we've turned a corner on this issue.